So, it's 3 o'clock. You've heard loads of middle-aged men with bald heads and dark suits speaking all afternoon. I can't change that, but what I can change is the presentation that I've put together is loads of colour and loads of animations. So, hosting in Ireland and data centres in Ireland. I want to talk to you about sort of the evolution and what we do, and my job as president and founder. I travel the world. I go to every place that there might be data, where there should be data, and we try and attract and sell Ireland as an optimum place for the data. If you take anything out of what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes, it's as follows. If data is the new oil, genuinely, you'll hear that everywhere. Data is the new oil, blah, blah, blah. The data center is the barrel. It doesn't actually matter unless you've got data. So my job and Host in Ireland's job is to actually make sure that people are looking at Ireland for the data, and guess what? Then you need lots of barrels. So I travel the world representing the largest companies, probably about 52 billion worth of companies are backing me and backing Hosts in Ireland to travel the world, but it's really these guys here. They don't have to be in Hosts in Ireland. In fact, most of them don't have to be in Ireland, but they are, and they've invested over the last probably 5 years in excess of 1.3 billion euros. We collaborate with everybody. That's the key to the success, as Paul says. Last week we were in Monaco, and we were up against all the other geographic locations in the world who have loads of barrels and have loads of everything. Why did Ireland win? Ireland won because of our ability to collaborate, our ability to present the proposition the way you'd want it, with all the different facets, not just bits and pieces. So why does it matter? Why do all of these sheds, very expensive sheds, why are they building at such an expansive rate? This is why. We have never seen ever anything like the explosion of content or data in the world. It's been driven by what you've got in your pocket. The mobile, the tablet. To give you some context on that, if you take out your phone, if you've got a 6-year-old child like I have, and she videos you in high definition for 2 minutes, it's probably equal to all of my life's work in PowerPoint, Excel. It's just at such levels that we've never seen before, and it's exponentially going on. To think about this, so a zettabyte, you'll see loads of thought leaders, I see them all over the world, and they think thoughts. I'm trying to find out what the thought is, and they tell me, well, just find a thought to think about. It's nonsense. Most of it's shite. Honest to goodness. Think about data like this, okay, as a grain of rice. Because nobody knows what a zettabyte of data looks like, but I've put Microsoft, all these guys talking about zettabytes as if we understand. I don't understand. I don't think you do. Think of it like this, and that's the amount we're going to have by 2020. We're going to have 22 Pacific Oceans full of grains of rice. That's 3 miles deep, and you can take every continent landmass in the world and put it into the Pacific. It needs to go somewhere. What we're suggesting is, and what we're presenting is, Ireland is as good a place as any to host that data. And then subsequently what you need is you need the barrels. We've broken it down into the power of the 5 Ps. Make it simple. I'm a techie, a very bad techie. I was an even worse sales engineer. I was an even worse salesman. That's why I'm up here being a thought leader. So anytime you see people like me, it's just because we're so incompetent at everything else. The 5 Ps is what we sell. Ireland's policy, our pedigree, our people, our power, and our pipes. And when you combine those 5 things together, we can defend ourselves against any geographic place in the world. We haven't got the cheapest energy. We haven't got the most connectivity. We haven't got the biggest population. We've certainly got some of the best policies in the world, and we've got the best pedigree. Pedigree is something that people trust. With data, you don't mess. You must trust the geographic location you're putting your data in. Therefore, that's the first #1 thing. I was told once by somebody that marketing is the ability where you tell people PR is the ability where you tell people you're great. PR, or whatever the other way around, is when other people start telling you that you're doing something right. When these types of people start saying that it's because of our collaborative, our ethos, that we're doing right, that's indefensible. Doesn't matter how much energy, doesn't matter how many pipes other places have. If people believe that we can be trusted and we've got all the blend, then we're onto a good thing. And in keeping with this particular theme, it's sustainable. You must build sustainable stuff. And this is what Paul was alluding to. This is the award we won, which is the global winner of the global innovative data center location on the planet. So we beat off all of the European, the American locations, the Asian locations. Why? Because they've all got bits of the piece, but nobody actually put it together and said, yeah, that's what we're looking for. So, depending on your age, the mainframe was the IT center of the universe in the 50s, 60s, and probably 70s. We've evolved now from where we said, my first mentor told me, if you want to understand the IT industry, get Animal Farm. Just get a book on it, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 2 legs bad, 4 legs good. Because actually he was right. We're back now to the mainframe, centralization. We thought that we wanted to distribute it. We thought we wanted PCs. We thought that we wanted local area networks and silos. Now we all want it back, same as this. Okay, it's all different, but it's exactly the same. Where has Ireland fitted into this equation? In every single one of the waves, we've always been able to attract the right type of company. So what I say often to people is, and maybe I'll ask you, how many people know what a punch card is? Floppy disk? CD-ROM? Blu-ray? Fob? You understand what the data center does, right? Because all it is all of that which you remember so fondly. If you were a punch card guy, you had to have it all lined up. That's the cloud of 1950. That's the cloud of 1960. There's no difference. It's how we store, how we do apps. It's just the evolution of where we are back in the 50s on a mainframe is where we are here now. So, this is the next wave, and this is where we start to get to these 22 zettabytes of data. There's 7 billion people on the planet. We can only generate so much data. Wait till the 50 billion digital nodes start talking to each other, and they're doing that 24/7. Then you're going to start to see 98% of all data by 2020 won't be generated by humans. It'll be generated by your car talking to this and that and the other. Wait till those little babies start getting together. That's when we're going to start to see the off the charts. And this was a slide, that's really just to demonstrate the different evolution, and this is even more, where if we look at data and we look at the evolution of data, depending on the punch card, right the way through to IoT. And this is where the man is getting upright again, because this is where all of the devices, including your Fitbit or your smart car or your smart devices, are all going to interoperate. And they're generating more definitional data than you'll ever do as a human just over a keyboard. Why Ireland? Well, we've got the pedigree. You've just seen it there. Mainframe, the first mainframe outside of North America was in Ireland, on the top of Shelbourne Hotel. IBM put it there. So it goes right back 60 years this year. If you want to even go back further, it was the first transatlantic cable ever went from Ireland to North America. So we've got all that pedigree. But really, what happened is in 1999, when we were building the M50, somebody actually in the corporation and the county councils had this brainwave. Why don't we actually circumnavigate the city with pipes, WAVN pipes, loads of them, for telecommunications infrastructure? So we designed this, and we have the T50. The T50 is the backbone of all data center interoperability in this city. Is the reason, probably the single reason why you've got such a cluster from Clonshock all the way around to City West. Then what came along is we got these guys, hyperscales, cloud scales, born on the internets. This is one of the other important messages to make, and particularly to construction guys. There are 6 hyperscales in the world. We have 5. The other one's Asian. They're not ready to come to Europe yet. So there aren't 20, 30, 40, 50, anything like this brand. And you saw yesterday, LinkedIn just got taken out by Microsoft. That's just taken probably 25 megawatts of a data center out of Dublin. It's going to be consumed into Microsoft. So we are going back. When Watson in 1948 and IBM said the world's only big enough for 5 computers, we laughed at him. We were laughing at him up to very recently. He was probably right. It's going to be Microsoft, Google, Amazon, da da da. Because your kids, or my grandchildren, will laugh when we say you own hardware and you own software. That's like generating your own electricity. Imagine generating your own electricity in your house. Nuts. Electricity and data availability is going to be exactly the same in 25 years. You ask anybody under the age of 20 here, if any company they work with, if they own hardware or software, bar the device, they'd break their shite laughing at you. This is the big wave, because we're at the stage, I know I don't want to get too technical, but public cloud are these big, big hyperscales that make software available to you as a service, whenever you want it, as you want it, when you want it. But that's not the real world. 80% of data is still in big corporations. They're not ready to chuck it all up to Microsoft or chuck it all up to Amazon. There's going to be a step change called hybrid cloud. I want to use some of that stuff, but I still want to retain my own. This is where they'll go into co-location. How do I equate co-location? Think of IKEA, Harvey Norman as the hyperscales, and then think of the co-location guys as Dundrum Shopping Centre. I'm not quite big enough, I'm big, but I'm not quite big enough. I'll have one big shed and I'll break it all down. So that allows other smaller companies to co-locate in these guys. And this is the reason why Dublin is now just going on an explosive growth, is because not that we have hyperscales, not that we have co-location, it's that we've got both. And if we agree that 98% of all data will be data center to data center, machine to machine, it's all going to be going on here, not to you and me, not to Frankfurt and Amsterdam. And when you combine it all together, that gives you an optimum physical place to host digital assets. Just think of yourselves. This has been great. This off-island fiber, I know that we've got some challenges as they do in Amsterdam, as they do in Holland and Britain, and all the rest about regional broadband. That's not what I'm talking about here. The main catalyst, the arteries for what we're doing is off-island fiber. 99.9% of all the data that we have in Ireland is for export. Think about it like if any of you worked for Microsoft or with Microsoft in 1983, you were sat around a round table, you got a floppy disk, got a cellophane, you put it into a box, you put it into a 40-foot container, and you shipped it out to Duisburg, right? Cloud is exactly the same, but we do it over fiber optic cable. So it's all export. We could get away with what we do in Ireland for the Irish 4 million people, probably down in Cork with CIX. 99.9% of all of what we have data in the centers is either owned by US companies, managed by US companies, and it's all for export. And this is the balance. This is the interesting thing, because these guys on the right-hand side, they get all the big credit, but actually what's making us more interesting and actually growing in size is the fact that the smaller dude can go in here and gain access to this. No good just having that, because that's really, it's great, it's wonderful, and Sweden and Finland can take them, because they have thousands of companies. That's sustainable. That's not sustainable. If you're in the business world or you're in the construction world, you either won their contract or you didn't, right? You're either on their tender list or you're not. There's only 5 of them, so good luck with that one. These guys here have thousands of opportunities. This girl here, you may or may not know, is probably the most important person in the whole of the world when it comes to the growth in this area. It's Helen Dixon, who's the Irish Data Protection Commissioner. Helen Dixon has been in the forefront of everything to do with data protection. Data protection is not data security. Very different. Data security on the left-hand side is to stop the bad guys getting at your shit. Data protection is what the good guys are going to do with your shit. And she's been in the crosshairs of that globally, and she will continue to be. The reason that I put Helen up there is because when we get to the stage where all devices are connected to all devices all over Europe, and this thing's called data in transit going across borders, data at rest in Ireland, there's going to be one hell of a bun fight. And it's going to need someone who understands both the disease and the patient to sort it out. Helen worked for Citrix as a senior vice president for 5 years. She understands both. She understands what we're doing, and she knows why it matters. Her principle about data protection is I'll regulate in front of the wall. Very different to most of the other data protection commissioners, where they'll trip you up and then they'll say, I told you so. She doesn't have the time or inclination, and she's Irish. We like to talk. She'll engage up front. They don't like that in Europe. They don't like that anywhere except in America. Another reason why we're winning so much business. She'll engage up front. She doesn't have the time, inclination, as I say, and probably right now the staff. This is a biggie. Every single person in this room, if you've got a packet of data, you need to be aware of this. On the 25th of May in 2018, if you don't get your shit in order with regard to data protection, what you do with the data, how you store it, how you moderate it. Up to 4% global revenue can be taken off you, because this is the new GDPR. The General Data Protection Regulations, which actually is the first time. It sounds ludicrous, but when you leave politicians to things, they take years to do stuff. 1995, right now, was the last time anyone had a policy for data. So it's all this ambiguity, pre-digitalization. 25th of May, this will come into force. If you don't know about it, get to know about it. You need a comptroller, you need all those people to pay lots of money to lots of legal people and lots of fiscal people, which you can be nailed very hard if you don't look after the data that people have given you, because it's not your property, it's their property. Privacy Shield is the ability to bring data out of Europe, not Ireland. This whole Privacy Shield, Safe Harbour, has nothing to do with Ireland. It's to do with Europe and America. That now has a new set of codes of conduct, and we hope to see that implemented very soon, or certainly enacted. Here's the opportunity, right? So we're doing great, we pat ourselves on the back and we win awards, and we can all go to the Bahamas and say, didn't we do a great job? The big opportunity is right here. Ireland goes out in the world, we're a wonderful exemplar for innovation, for taxation, for policies, on all of these different clusters that call Ireland home. The Troika had a crack at us for 12.5%. He didn't win. The biggest sentiment, the biggest message that went out to the world is that the biggest bank with the biggest weight, they're not going to break us. Our biggest thing is 12.5% corporation tax. Get over it. You know, you agree with it or don't agree with it. The jobs that are created are fantastic. These are the opportunities now that they're here. And yet, 80% of them aren't hosting here. So we've got 1,350 companies that call Ireland home, from pharmaceuticals to biocare, from e-commerce right the way up, and only 20% of them have any data here. And our research tells us that the reason that the other 80% don't host here is A, I'm not responsible for it, or B, oh, I thought Ireland was only good for Amazon, Google, Microsoft, etc., because that's what gets the airwaves. What an opportunity that is. In my heart, I'm a salesman. You always go back to your own clients that you've already. So if you can imagine, if the amount of data centers that you're seeing grown, developed, etc., is only representing 20% of the opportunity, engage with your pharmaceutical companies, your biocare companies, your financial services companies, and say, why aren't you hosting here? What's the issue? Why aren't you? Help this story, and then it'll be sustainable. Whereas we don't want these hyperscales to go so far ahead. That'll be like buying in Dunnes Stores, and we all know if you sell your soul to Dunnes Stores, someday they go and get somebody else that's cheaper, you're fucked. That's what we don't want to do. We need to build out the other side of it, otherwise this is not a sustainable gig. So, takeaways. 5 of the 6 hyperscales are here. There is only one more. Google it. It's not hard to find out who the 5th is. They're Asian. They start with an A and end with an A, and it opens the door when you appear. Small and medium is also good. Don't chase the big guy all the time, because you either win the contract or you don't. I've 1 minute. It's not bad for me. Data protection sovereignty is the greatest risk and the greatest opportunity. If this sovereignty of data between different geographic locations and different municipalities isn't sorted out, it'll stop. It'll stymie IoT. I hear thought leaders talking about, oh, it's all about interoperability. It's about getting that device to talk to that device. Nonsense. It's about, can we trust it? Can the consumer trust putting their data there? And if they can't, it'll all stop. And this guy here, engage with 80% not hosting. Walk away and say to your Mr. Pharmaceutical, do you put any data here? No? Okay, well, why aren't you doing it? And this is the key. My absolute hero in life, as you know, passed away. If we haven't learned anything in the last 30 years, what have we been doing? That sustainability of anything is all about having a blend and a balance. And if we allow that hyperscale thing to go off the charts, we're goosed. We're buying into Dunnes Stores. They can go anywhere. Apple are generating 128 billion a year, surplus cash. They could wipe out our national debt overnight. They can go anywhere. Thank you.